The meeting hall stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal, its walls alive with shifting patterns of light that showed the power of the Galactic Confederation. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in their designated sections, each species displaying their advanced technology and ancient wisdom. The Vorth Empire's delegates floated in their crystal shells, their bodies made of living gemstone that sparkled with inner fire. The Zelthak Collective's speaker moved as one mind, controlling dozens of bodies. Each thought shared instantly across their hive network. The Nexari appeared as pure energy, their forms shifting between colors that had no names in most languages. In the back corner of the Great Hall, almost hidden from view, sat the human delegation, 3 people in simple gray uniforms, sitting at a small table made of basic metal. Their translator device sat between them, a crude box that converted their primitive language into something the galaxy could understand. They had been here for 6 months now, watching and learning, saying little. Ambassador David Torres looked around the hall with careful eyes. His face showed nothing, but his mind was busy. He watched how the Vorth made their decisions, how the Zelthak shared information, how the Nexari shifted their energy patterns when they disagreed. Every detail was important. Every weakness was noted. The Confederation had first found Earth 50 years ago. A Zelthak scout ship had detected radio signals coming from the Sol system and decided to investigate. What they found was a young species that had barely left their home planet. Humans had small colonies on Mars and the Moon, mining ships in the asteroid belt, and dreams of reaching the stars. The Zelthak reported back to the Confederation that humanity was harmless, primitive, and useful only for basic labor. When the first official contact team arrived at Earth, they found exactly what they expected. Human ships were slow and clumsy, made of steel and aluminum like ancient artifacts. Human technology was crude, barely able to achieve faster-than-light travel. Human weapons were projectile-based, throwing pieces of metal at targets like Stone Age hunters. The galaxy's experts laughed at human attempts at energy manipulation and space-time theory. What they did not know was that every human ship they saw was a fake. The real human fleet had been invisible for over 200 years, hidden by technology that made their ships exist in a space between dimensions. While the galaxy studied humanity's supposed limitations, the true human civilization had been growing in secret. The decision to hide had been made long before first contact. Human scientists had detected galactic civilizations when they were still learning how to split atoms. They saw how the galaxy worked, how stronger species dominated weaker ones, how newcomers were always treated as lesser beings. So humanity chose to appear weak while they grew strong. Ambassador Torres remembered his briefings before coming to this place. He knew the real size of the human fleet, the true power of human technology, the actual scope of human knowledge, but he sat quietly in his corner, playing the role of a primitive representative of a backward species. The matter of System 7742 requires immediate attention, announced the session leader, a Nexari whose energy form pulsed with authority. The humans have requested permission to establish a second colony world in their local system. Torres stood slowly, his translator device crackling as it came online. Around the hall, hundreds of advanced beings turned to look at him with barely hidden contempt. Many did not even bother to hide their amusement. "Honorable members of the Confederation," Torres said, his words converted into the common galactic language by his primitive device. "My people only ask for a small world to ease our population pressure. The planet we request is mostly rock and ice, unsuitable for most species." A Vorth delegate's crystalline form flashed with patterns that indicated scorn. "Humans already possess one world. That should be sufficient for a species of your limited capabilities. Your population growth is inefficient. Learn to control your breeding instead of seeking new territory." Several species made sounds that served as laughter among their kind. Torres felt the familiar burn of anger in his chest, but his face remained calm. His people had been insulted like this for 5 decades now. Every slight was remembered. Every moment of contempt was recorded. The Zelthak speaker moved its multiple bodies in a pattern that showed agreement. The Vorth speak wisdom. Primitive species must learn their place. Resources are limited. Expanding weak bloodlines serves no purpose. Torres bowed his head as if accepting the judgment. We understand the wisdom of the Confederation. Perhaps we might be allowed to send more workers to the mining operations in the Outer Rim? Our people are willing to serve in dangerous conditions. This suggestion met with approval from many species. Human workers were useful because they could survive in environments that would kill most other beings. They did not complain about radiation, extreme temperatures, or toxic atmospheres. They worked hard and asked for little in return. What the galaxy did not understand was why humans could work in such deadly places. They assumed it was because Earth was a harsh world that had made humans naturally tough. They never realized that human workers wore advanced personal shields that protected them from any environment. The technology that kept a human alive in a radioactive mine was the same technology that could make human warships invisible to galactic sensors. The session moved on to other matters. Torres returned to his seat and continued his quiet observation. He watched the Confederation make decisions about trade routes, territorial disputes, and resource allocation. He saw how they treated species based on perceived strength or weakness. The pattern was always the same. The strong took what they wanted. The weak accepted what they were given. Hours later, as the session ended, Torres walked back to his small quarters in the station's lowest level. The rooms given to humans were basic and uncomfortable. Located near the waste processing systems, another deliberate insult to remind humanity of their place. In his room, Torres activated a small device hidden in his personal belongings. The device was smaller than his fingernail, but more advanced than anything the Confederation possessed. It sent a message across space, traveling through dimensions the galaxy had not discovered, reaching Earth in seconds, despite being thousands of light years away. The message was simple. Status unchanged. They remain blind to our true nature. Continue preparations. On Earth, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Sarah Chen received the message in her command center. Around her, displays showed the positions of 10,000 human ships hidden throughout the galaxy. Each ship was invisible, waiting, watching, learning. Chen smiled as she read Torres's message. The galaxy thought it knew humanity. Soon, they would learn how wrong they had been. But not yet. For now, they would continue to play their role as the quiet, primitive species that posed no threat to anyone. The galaxy had made its choice about humanity 50 years ago. Soon, humanity would show them the consequences of that choice. 23 years had passed since humanity first sat in the observer's corner of the Confederation Hall. In that time, things had only gotten worse for the human species, or so it appeared to the galaxy. Marcus Webb stood on the observation deck of Mining Station Kappa 7, watching human workers descend into the radioactive depths of the asteroid below. The mining operation was located in a system where 3 dying stars created a field of deadly radiation that would kill most galactic species within minutes. But humans seemed to thrive here, pulling valuable crystals from the asteroid's core with their bare hands. Webb was the station's supervisor, appointed by the Vorth Empire to oversee human operations. He was also something the Vorth did not suspect: an intelligence officer for the real human military. Like thousands of others scattered across the galaxy, he watched and learned while pretending to be just another primitive human doing dangerous work. The mining shifts lasted 18 hours. Human workers went down into holes that glowed with deadly energy, using simple tools to crack open crystal formations worth more than entire star systems. They worked in conditions that would instantly kill a Vorth or drive a Zelthak collective insane. When they finished their shifts, they returned to basic sleeping quarters, with thin walls and recycled air. What the aliens did not know was that each human worker wore a personal shield generator that protected them completely from radiation, toxic gas, and extreme temperatures. The technology was invisible to galactic sensors and more advanced than anything the Confederation had ever created. The humans could have mined the asteroids clean in a single day if they had revealed their true capabilities. But Webb's orders were clear. Maintain the illusion. Work slowly. Act tired. Complain about the conditions but never rebel. Let the galaxy believe they were squeezing every bit of value from primitive human labor. 3 star systems away, Captain Lisa Park received her new assignment from Confederation Command. Her cargo ship, the Resilience, was being sent to transport human colonists to another worthless planet. The planet was a frozen rock orbiting a dim red star, with no atmosphere and surface temperatures that dropped to -200 degrees. The Confederation had decided this world was perfect for human expansion. After all, humans seemed to enjoy living in terrible conditions. The fact that no other species wanted the planet made it ideal for the primitives. Park looked at the colonist manifest on her display screen. 5,000 families, all volunteers who believed they were going to build a new home in the stars. They would live in domed cities under artificial atmosphere, growing food in underground farms, slowly expanding across the frozen surface of their new world. What the galaxy did not know was that each human colony ship carried construction equipment that could terraform an entire planet in less than a year. The technology existed to create breathable atmospheres, warm climates, and fertile soil on any world. But using such advanced equipment would reveal too much, too soon. So the humans would build their dome cities and underground farms, pretending to struggle with the harsh conditions while they slowly spread across the galaxy. Each colony was actually a forward base, equipped with hidden weapons and communications arrays that linked back to Earth's true military network. The pattern repeated on hundreds of worlds. Humans were sent to mine poisonous gas giants, farm volcanic planets, and establish outposts near unstable stars. The galaxy congratulated itself on finding such useful workers, never suspecting they were seeding human military bases throughout their territory. But the worst insults came from the Confederation Council itself. Ambassador Torres still sat in his corner, watching the great powers of the galaxy make decisions that affected trillions of beings. Humans had no voice in these decisions, no vote on matters that often involved human colonies and workers. When the Zelthak Collective wanted to expand their hive mind network through human space, they simply announced their intention to the Council. No one asked for human permission. The psychic amplifiers they planned to build would cause severe brain damage to any human within 1,000 kilometers. But this was considered an acceptable cost. Torres stood to object, but was reminded by the session leader that observer species could not participate in debates. He was told to return to his seat and remain silent while his people's fate was decided by beings who saw them as barely more than animals. The vote was unanimous in favor of the Zelthak expansion. Torres returned to his corner, making notes on his primitive datapad. Another species had revealed their true nature. Another decision had been recorded for future reference. The breaking point came during the council session of Galactic Year 2434. Torres had been sitting in his corner for over 2 decades, watching his species be slowly dismantled by the casual cruelty of galactic politics. Human colonies had been forcibly relocated 17 times to make room for more advanced species. Human workers had been sent to increasingly dangerous assignments, with higher and higher casualty rates. Human requests for better conditions, for representation, for basic dignity, had been denied again and again. Then the Vorth Empire made their announcement. The Sol system contains crystalline formations of great strategic value, declared High Crystal Vorth Prime Alpha, his form blazing with patterns of greed and authority. Our geological surveys have detected deposits that are essential for our next phase of expansion. The primitive humans currently infesting this system must be relocated within 1 galactic standard year. The chamber fell silent. Even by Confederation standards, claiming another species' home system was an extreme action. But the Vorth were powerful. Their crystal technology was valuable to many other species. And humans were seen as expendable. Torres felt his heart stop beating for a moment. They were talking about Earth. Not just another colony world. Not just another mining station. But humanity's birthplace. The cradle of human civilization was being casually handed over to alien strip miners. The Nexari delegate pulsed with energy patterns that indicated consideration. What compensation do you offer the human species for this relocation? Vorth Prime Alpha's crystal form flashed with amusement. Compensation? They may keep whatever primitive belongings they can carry. We will provide basic transport to any system that will accept them. This is more generosity than their status requires. One by one, the great powers of the galaxy voiced their agreement. The Zelthak collective saw no value in protecting a primitive species' emotional attachment to their birth world. The energy beings of the Nexari considered matter to be temporary anyway. Smaller species stayed silent, afraid to oppose the powerful Vorth Empire. Torres watched the vote counter on his display as it climbed toward the required majority. 500 votes in favor. 501. 502. Each vote was another nail in humanity's coffin, another species declaring that human life and human history meant nothing to them. When the final tally appeared, it read 847 votes in favor of Vorth expansion, 0 votes against. Not a single species in the galaxy had spoken up for humanity. Torres sat in his chair, staring at the numbers. Around him, the Confederation delegates began discussing the technical details of human relocation, as if they were talking about moving furniture. How many transport ships would be needed? Which systems might accept human refugees? How long should the evacuation process take? Slowly, Torres reached up to touch a small device attached to his collar. It looked like a simple badge of rank, but it was actually a quantum communicator more advanced than anything in the Confederation's arsenal. With a gentle pressure, he activated a signal that traveled across space, faster than light, reaching every hidden human base in the galaxy. The message was brief but clear. The vote is complete. They have chosen their fate. Begin final preparations. On Earth, Admiral Chen received the signal in her command center beneath the Pacific Ocean. She looked up at the massive display screen showing the positions of the human fleet. 10,000 ships, each one invisible to galactic sensors, each one equipped with weapons that could crack planets in half. Chen had hoped it would not come to this. For over 70 years, humanity had tried to find a peaceful place in the galaxy. They had offered their knowledge, their friendship, their cooperation. Instead, they had received nothing but contempt, exploitation, and now exile from their own home. The galaxy had made its choice. They saw humans as primitive vermin to be used and discarded. They had voted to destroy humanity's birth world for mining profits. They had made it clear that human life had no value in their civilization. Now they would learn what humanity was truly capable of. But it was too late for mercy. The galaxy had killed itself with its own cruelty and blindness. Chen began entering commands into her console. Across human space, hidden bases received their activation codes. Sleeper agents, embedded in alien governments for decades, received their final orders. The real human military, invisible and patient for nearly a century, began to move. The galaxy would soon understand that they had not been dealing with primitives. They had been at war with the most dangerous species in known space, and they had not even realized it until it was far too late. High Crystal Vorth Prime Alpha stood in the command center of his harvest fleet, watching the blue-white star of the Sol system grow larger on his displays. Around him floated 200 of the Empire's finest crystal ships, each one equipped with planet-cracking mining equipment, and escorts armed with the most advanced weapons in Vorth space. The human evacuation deadline had passed 3 days ago. Intelligence reports suggested that most of the primitive humans had fled to other systems, though some stubborn groups remained on their homeworld. This was expected. Primitive species often showed emotional attachment to their birth planets, even when logic demanded they accept superior wisdom. Surface scans show approximately 50 million humans still on the third planet, reported his tactical officer, a smaller crystal being whose form pulsed with data streams. Their defensive capabilities remain minimal. A few orbital platforms with projectile weapons, several squadrons of their crude fighter craft, nothing that poses a threat to our operations. Vorth Prime Alpha's crystalline form flashed with satisfaction. The Sol system contained enough strategic crystals to fuel Vorth expansion for the next 1,000 years. The primitive inhabitants were an inconvenience. Nothing more. Begin wide-area evacuation protocols, he commanded. Use sonic disruptors to drive the remaining humans from our target zones. If they resist, use standard pacification measures. Minimize damage to the crystal formations. His fleet moved into formation around Earth, their massive ships blotting out sections of sky as they descended toward the planet's surface. For nearly a century, The galaxy had known that humans were weak, primitive, and harmless. Today would simply confirm that knowledge. Then something impossible happened. "Sir." His tactical officer's form began flashing with alarm patterns. "I'm detecting energy signatures that should not exist. Multiple contacts appearing on sensors. This cannot be correct." On the main display, space around Earth began to change. What had been empty void moments before now showed contacts. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Then thousands. Ship after ship materialized out of nothing, their forms unlike anything in the galactic database. The human vessels did not look like the crude metal boxes the galaxy was familiar with. These ships seemed to be grown rather than built, their hulls flowing like organic tissue but harder than any known material. They moved without visible propulsion, sliding through space as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions to be ignored. "Fleet Admiral, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Force," came a transmission on frequencies the Vorth had not known existed. The voice was calm, almost conversational, but carried an undertone that made Vorth Prime Alpha's crystal matrix resonate with something he had never felt before. "Fear. You have illegally invaded human space and threatened human citizens," the voice continued. "You have 30 seconds to withdraw your fleet beyond the orbit of Pluto, or you will be destroyed." Vorth Prime Alpha's form blazed with patterns of outrage and disbelief. "Impossible! Humans do not possess military technology. Our intelligence has observed your species for nearly a century." Chen's response came with what sounded like amusement. "Your intelligence observed exactly what we wanted you to see. We have been watching you for much longer than you have been watching us." 15 seconds remain. Around Earth, the human fleet continued to grow. The scanner displays showed over 10,000 contacts now, each one reading as more massive and more advanced than the largest Vorth battleship. But this was impossible. No species could hide such a fleet from galactic sensors. The technology simply did not exist. "All ships, prepare defensive formations," Vorth Prime Alpha commanded. "These primitives are using some form of sensor deception. They cannot have real military capability." The countdown reached 0. What happened next would be studied by military historians for millennia, though few beings would live to see those studies completed. The human ships did not fire energy beams or launch projectile weapons. They did something that should have been impossible according to all known laws of science. They manipulated gravity itself. The Vorth flagship, a crystal cathedral 3 kilometers long and armed with weapons that could sterilize planets, simply collapsed. Not destroyed by explosions or melted by energy beams, collapsed. The space around it folded inward, crushing the mighty vessel into a point smaller than an atom. Where the flagship had existed, only a brief flash of energy remained. Across the Vorth fleet, the same thing happened to ship after ship. The crystal beings inside had no time to scream before their vessels were compressed into microscopic singularities. The proud harvest fleet that had come to strip mine Earth was reduced to glittering dust in less than 30 seconds. The few surviving Vorth ships, those at the edge of the formation who had time to raise emergency shields, found themselves surrounded by human vessels that should not have been able to exist. These ships moved without regard for momentum or acceleration, appearing and disappearing, like ghosts made solid. "Surrender your vessels and prepare to be boarded," Admiral Chen's voice announced calmly. "Any attempt to flee or fight will result in your immediate destruction." But the revelation was only beginning. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on hundreds of worlds. Every human mining operation, every human colony, every place where the galaxy had sent primitive human workers was revealed to be something else entirely. On mining station Kappa 7, Marcus Webb threw off his disguise. The radiation-proof suit he had worn for 23 years dissolved away, revealing advanced armor that hummed with energy fields. Around him, thousands of human workers were doing the same, their crude tools transforming into weapons that made the station's alien overseers freeze in terror. "This is Commander Webb of the Human Intelligence Corps," he announced to the station's communication system. "All non-human personnel are now prisoners of war. Cooperation will be rewarded. Resistance will be eliminated." The Zelthak supervisors tried to coordinate a response through their hive mind network, but found their psychic connections severed by human jamming technology they had not known existed. The energy beings who ran the station's power systems discovered that humans had devices that could disrupt their cohesion fields, forcing them into containment chambers. On frozen worlds across the galaxy, human colonists were emerging from their dome cities with construction equipment that began terraforming entire planets in real time. Atmospheres were generated, climates were adjusted, and barren rocks became garden worlds in a matter of hours. The struggling colonies the galaxy had pitied were revealed to be forward military bases equipped with technology that made Confederation science look like Stone Age tools. Back in the Sol system, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Retribution, watching the last few Vorth vessels surrender. Her ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, grown from organic compounds that existed partially outside normal space-time. Its weapons could crack moons, its shields could withstand the heart of a star, and its sensors could detect thoughts across interstellar distances. "Admiral, we're receiving communications from across the galaxy," reported her tactical officer. "All human assets have been revealed simultaneously. Operation Sleeping Giant is complete," Chen nodded. For nearly a century, humanity had pretended to be weak while building the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen. Every insult, every act of exploitation, every moment of contempt had been endured, while human scientists pushed the boundaries of physics itself. "Open a channel to all galactic governments," Chen ordered. "Use every communication frequency and every emergency broadcast system. I want every being in this galaxy to hear what I have to say." The message that went out reached every world, every station, every ship in Confederation space. It bypassed security systems that were supposed to be impenetrable, translated itself into every known language, and forced itself onto every display screen in the galaxy. "People of the Galactic Confederation," Chen's voice echoed across 1,000 star systems. "For 73 years, you have known humanity as a primitive species, suitable only for dangerous labor. You have exploited our people, stolen our resources, and dismissed our worth. Today, you learn the truth." On the main display behind her, images appeared showing the true scope of human technology. Ships that could travel between galaxies, weapons that could rearrange stellar matter, cities that existed in folded space where millions of people lived in areas the size of molecules. The humans had not just hidden their military, they had hidden an entire advanced civilization. "We tried to join your confederation in peace," Chen continued. "We offered cooperation, friendship, and mutual growth. You chose exploitation instead. You sent our people to die in radioactive mines. You forced our families onto worthless worlds. And yesterday, you voted to steal our birth world for mining profits." Images flashed, showing the vote in the Confederation Council. The contemptuous dismissal of human rights. The casual decision to destroy Earth's biosphere for crystal extraction. "You have made your choice," Chen said, her voice growing cold. "Now you will live with the consequences, or you will not live at all." Across the galaxy, Confederation governments were receiving reports that made no sense. Human workers were not workers but soldiers. Human colonies were not colonies but military bases. Human ships were not primitive but more advanced than anything in galactic civilization. The species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia suddenly realized they were not facing rebellious primitives. They were at war with beings whose technology was so advanced it might as well be magic. And they had started this war by attacking the homeworld of creatures who could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. In the Confederation Council chamber, the session leader tried to restore order as panic spread among the delegates. Species that had never known fear were discovering what terror felt like. The galaxy's greatest powers were realizing that they had been living at the mercy of beings they had treated as slaves. And in the Sol system, Admiral Chen watched the last Vorth prisoners being transferred to human custody. Around her, 10,000 human warships hung in space like dark angels, their true forms revealed at last. The galaxy had wanted to see what humans were really capable of. Now, they would find out. And for most of them, the knowledge would come far too late to save their civilizations. The Zelthak Collective's home system had been the heart of galactic communication for over 3,000 years. 17 worlds connected by a vast network of psychic amplifiers allowed the hive mind species to coordinate activities across half the galaxy. Their collective consciousness was considered unbreakable, their unity absolute, their information networks completely secure. Commander Lisa Park watched from the bridge of her stealth cruiser as human infiltration teams activated throughout the system. For 40 years, humans posing as maintenance workers had been installing hidden devices in the Zelthak amplifier network. The aliens had never suspected that their most sensitive communications were being monitored by the primitive species they used for dangerous labor. "All teams report ready, Commander," her tactical officer announced. "Bioweapons are in position at every amplification node." Park nodded. The Zelthak believed their hive mind made them superior to individual consciousness. They were about to learn that shared thoughts could become a weakness when the right virus was introduced to the network. "Execute Operation Chaos Theory," Park commanded. Across 17 worlds, human agents activated devices smaller than grains of sand, but more complex than entire Zelthak cities. The bioweapons they released did not attack the aliens' physical bodies. Instead, they attacked something far more fundamental: the mathematical harmony that allowed millions of individual Zelthak to function as one mind. The virus spread through the hive network at light speed, introducing random elements into the precise thought patterns that kept the collective stable. Within minutes, the unified consciousness that had ruled a quarter of the galaxy began to break apart, like a song played with instruments that could no longer hear each other. On the primary Zelthak world, millions of beings who had shared thoughts for their entire lives suddenly found themselves alone in their own minds. The panic was immediate and absolute. Some tried to reconnect to the failing network, burning out their neural pathways in the attempt. Others simply collapsed as their individual personalities, suppressed for centuries, tried to reassert themselves all at once. The Zelthak military, which had coordinated perfectly for millennia, fell into complete chaos. Ship captains who had never made independent decisions found themselves unable to function without constant guidance from the collective. Entire fleets drifted helplessly as their crews struggled to remember how to think as individuals. But the Zelthak were not the only ones facing human retaliation. In the energy fields surrounding the galactic core, the Nexari civilization was discovering that their mastery over pure energy had a weakness they had never considered. The Nexari existed as conscious plasma, beings of organized electricity who could manipulate matter at the molecular level. They had evolved beyond physical form millions of years ago and considered themselves the most advanced species in the universe. Their cities were patterns of controlled lightning. Their thoughts moved at the speed of light, and their technology was based on direct manipulation of electromagnetic force. Admiral Chen had assigned their destruction to Commander James Harrison, whose expertise was quantum physics. Harrison's ship, the Probability, hung invisible in the Nexari home system, its crew preparing weapons that worked on principles the energy beings had never imagined. "Quantum disruptors are armed and ready," Harrison's science officer reported. "All Nexari energy patterns have been mapped and targeted." The Nexari had made a fundamental mistake in their evolution. In becoming pure energy, they had also become predictable. Energy follows laws of physics, moves in patterns that could be calculated and disrupted. The humans had spent decades studying Nexari thought patterns, learning the exact frequencies their consciousness required to remain coherent. "Fire when ready," Harrison commanded. The human weapons did not shoot beams of light or projectiles of matter. They fired chaos, quantum fields that introduced uncertainty into the fundamental forces holding the Nexari together. Across the galactic core, beings of organized energy suddenly found their forms becoming random, their thoughts scattering like sparks from a broken wire. The Nexari tried to fight back, focusing their collective power to restore order to their disrupted forms. But the human disruptors worked on quantum principles, introducing randomness at a level below conscious control. The harder the energy beings tried to maintain coherence, the faster they dissolved into uncontrolled plasma. Within hours, the oldest civilization in the galaxy was reduced to random electrical discharges dancing across dead worlds. The beings who had considered matter to be temporary and consciousness eternal discovered that energy could be just as fragile as flesh when the right weapons were used against it. Meanwhile, in the crystal cities of the Vorth Empire, a different kind of destruction was taking place. The crystalline beings had evolved to be nearly indestructible, their bodies harder than diamond, their technology based on manipulating the molecular structure of matter itself. They had seemed invincible to conventional weapons. But Commander Sarah Mills had studied Vorth crystal structure for 20 years, learning exactly how their molecular bonds were formed and maintained. Her fleet surrounded the Vorth homeworld, preparing to demonstrate that even diamonds could be shattered if you knew where to strike. Gravity pulse weapons are calibrated, her weapons officer reported. Target resonance frequencies have been confirmed. The Vorth had built their civilization on perfect crystal matrices, structures so precise that they could channel energy across interstellar distances. But perfection had a price. Any flaw in the matrix would spread through the entire structure like cracks through ice. The human gravity weapons did not attack the crystals directly. Instead, they created localized distortions in spacetime itself. Tiny variations in gravitational force that introduced microscopic stress fractures into the Vorth crystal matrices. Once started, the fractures spread according to the laws of physics, turning perfect crystal bodies into clouds of glittering dust. The Vorth homeworld, a single massive crystal that housed billions of beings, began to crack. Fissures appeared at the molecular level and spread upward, growing from hairline fractures to canyon-sized splits in seconds. The crystalline beings tried to repair the damage, but the human weapons kept introducing new stress points faster than the Vorth could compensate. The planet's surface shattered like a dropped mirror. Crystal cities that had stood for millions of years collapsed into sparkling fragments. The Vorth themselves, their bodies resonating with the same frequencies as their homeworld, began to crack and crumble as the gravitational distortions spread through their molecular structure. High Crystal Vorth Prime Alpha, who had survived the destruction of his harvest fleet, watched from his emergency command center as his entire civilization died around him. His crystalline form, once blazing with patterns of authority and power, now flickered with cracks that spread like spider webs across his surface. How? He managed to transmit before his communication matrix shattered completely. How did primitives accomplish this? The answer came from Admiral Chen, her voice reaching him through communication technology the Vorth could not understand. We are not primitives. We never were. You saw only what we wanted you to see. Across the galaxy, similar scenes of destruction were playing out. Species that had ruled star systems for millions of years were learning that their greatest strengths could become fatal weaknesses when faced with enemies who truly understood their nature. The gas giant dwellers who breathed methane found their atmospheres turning toxic as human weapons introduced catalyst particles that altered atmospheric chemistry. The machine intelligences that had replaced their biological creators discovered that their quantum processors could be crashed by carefully crafted logic bombs that human infiltrators had been planting for decades. But the humans were not randomly destroying everything in their path. Each attack was precisely calculated to target specific species that had voted for Earth's destruction. Those who had remained neutral or shown any mercy toward humanity received different treatment. Warnings, demands for surrender, offers of protection in exchange for cooperation. The galaxy was learning that humans understood the difference between enemies who had chosen cruelty and bystanders who had simply been afraid to oppose it. This selective approach made the destruction even more terrifying to the surviving species. The primitives were not mindless killers. They were strategic thinkers who remembered every slight and planned appropriate responses. In his hidden command center beneath Earth's Pacific Ocean, Admiral Chen watched the tactical displays showing human operations across the galaxy. Red markers showed enemy civilizations in the process of being eliminated. Yellow markers indicated neutral species who had been offered terms of surrender. Green markers represented the few allies humanity had found. Younger species who had also suffered under Confederation rule. Status report, she requested. Zelthak Collective is effectively destroyed, came the reply from her operations officer. Hive mind network has collapsed completely. Individual survivors are incapable of coordinated action. Nexari civilization has been dispersed. Energy coherence patterns broken at the quantum level. No reconstruction is possible with available technology. Vorth Empire homeworld has been shattered. Crystal Matrix cascade failure has spread to 7 additional core worlds. Military resistance has ceased. AD, Chen nodded. 3 of the 4 major powers that had ruled the galaxy were gone, destroyed by their own arrogance and humanity's patience. The 4th and largest power, the ancient Confederation bureaucracy itself, remained. But without the Zelthak communication network, the Nexari energy manipulation technology, and the Vorth crystal weapons, the central government was already collapsing under its own weight. What about civilian populations? Chen asked. Evacuation protocols are proceeding as planned, her tactical officer replied. Non-combatant populations from destroyed worlds are being relocated to habitable systems. Refugee camps are being established with full life support. This was perhaps the most frightening aspect of the human campaign for the surviving galactic governments. The species that was systematically destroying their civilizations was also carefully preserving their innocent populations. Humans rescued civilians from worlds they were about to destroy, provided medical care to enemy wounded, and established refugee camps with better living conditions than many species had enjoyed under Confederation rule. The message was clear. Humanity was capable of both perfect mercy and perfect ruthlessness, deployed with surgical precision according to each species' actions toward Earth. Those who had shown kindness received kindness in return. Those who had chosen cruelty were experiencing the full scope of human technological superiority. Across the galaxy, the remaining governments were beginning to understand the scope of their mistake. They had not just underestimated a primitive species. They had systematically abused the most advanced civilization in known space, while that civilization carefully documented every insult and prepared appropriate responses. The galaxy had indeed killed itself, not through human malice but through its own blind cruelty. Now the surviving species faced a choice: surrender to the primitives they had scorned, or join the growing list of civilizations that had learned too late what humanity was truly capable of accomplishing. The neutral station Harmony Point drifted in empty space between star systems, a place that had been built for emergency diplomatic meetings between species that could not safely visit each other's worlds. Today, it hosted the most important gathering in galactic history: the surrender negotiations between humanity and what remained of the Galactic Confederation. Ambassador David Torres walked through the station's corridors, noting how different this meeting was from the council sessions he had attended for over 2 decades. Then, he had been forced to wait in corners, denied even the right to speak while decisions were made about his species' fate. Now, representatives from across the galaxy waited nervously for him to decide their futures. The main conference room had been designed to accommodate hundreds of different life forms, but today it held fewer than 50 beings. These were the survivors, representatives from species whose governments had been smart enough to surrender quickly when the human offensive began, or lucky enough to be too small for humanity to consider a major threat. Torres entered the room alone. No guards, no weapons, no display of military power. He did not need them. Every being in the room knew exactly what human forces were capable of after watching the galaxy's greatest civilizations collapse in a matter of weeks. At the head of the table sat what remained of the Confederation Council leadership. The energy being who had once led sessions with casual authority now flickered weakly, its form unstable without Nexari technology to maintain coherence. A junior Zelthak representative twitched nervously, its individual consciousness still struggling to function without hive mind support. Several smaller species huddled together, seeking comfort in numbers that no longer provided safety. Honored representatives, Torres began, using the same formal language he had once been forced to use when begging for basic rights for his people. We are here to discuss the terms under which your civilizations may continue to exist. The room fell silent. Many of these beings had ruled star systems when humans were still learning to make fire. Now they sat as prisoners, waiting to learn if their species would survive the consequences of their own choices. Before we begin, Torres continued, I want to ensure you understand your situation completely. The Vorth Empire no longer exists. Their crystal cities have been shattered, their homeworld reduced to cosmic dust. The Zelthak collective has been dissolved, their hive mind broken beyond repair. The Nexari civilization has been dispersed at the quantum level. Their energy forms scattered across empty space. He paused, letting the information sink in. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats or environmental suits. These species were not destroyed because they were powerful, Torres explained. They were destroyed because they chose to be cruel. Every civilization that showed mercy toward humanity, that spoke against our exploitation, that offered aid to our people, has been spared. Those who voted to steal our homeworld and exile our species have paid the price for that decision. A small creature from the Botanical Union, one of the few species that had consistently opposed human exploitation, found the courage to speak. What? What are your terms for our survival? Torres smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both warm and terrifying. Our terms are simple. Accept human leadership of this galaxy. Provide full disclosure of all military capabilities and technological resources. Agree to binding treaties that prevent the exploitation of weaker species. Do these things, and you will find humanity to be far more generous than the Confederation ever was. And if we refuse? Asked a mechanical intelligence, whose quantum processors hummed with barely contained fear. Then you will join the Vorth, the Zelthak, and the Nexari in galactic history, Torres replied calmly. Your choice to make. The negotiations continued for hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. One by one, the surviving species agreed to humanity's terms. They had seen what happened to those who opposed human interests, and none of them wanted their civilizations to become cautionary tales for future historians. But Torres had one more revelation waiting for them. There is something else you need to understand, he said as the formal surrenders were being signed. For the past 73 years, you have known humanity as a primitive species, barely capable of space travel. This was a deliberate deception on our part. We have been spacefaring for over 500 years. The room erupted in shocked whispers and electronic static as various species processed this information. Our real civilization extends far beyond this galaxy, Torres continued. What you have seen here, our fleet, our technology, our military capabilities, this represents less than 1% of human space. We are part of an intergalactic confederation that spans 17 galaxies and includes over 2 million species. The silence that followed was absolute. The beings who had thought themselves masters of a galaxy were learning that they were actually primitives by the standards of the larger universe. Why? Whispered the Botanical Union representative. Why hide your true nature? Why allow us to treat you as slaves? Torres's expression softened slightly. Because we hoped you would choose to be better than you were. When our scouts first detected galactic civilization, we saw species that had achieved faster than light, travel, energy manipulation, and interstellar communication. We thought you might be ready to join the larger galactic community. He gestured to the empty seats where the great powers representatives would once have sat. Instead, we found civilizations trapped in cycles of exploitation and cruelty. You treated weaker species as resources to be consumed. You denied basic rights to any being you considered inferior. You ruled through fear rather than inspiring cooperation. Torres activated a holographic display showing the true scope of human civilization. Stars and galaxies wheeled in the projection, connected by transport networks that spanned distances the Confederation had never imagined possible. This is what you could have been part of, he explained. A community of equals working together to explore the universe and unlock its mysteries. Instead, you chose to be petty tyrants ruling over a single galaxy. But surely, the mechanical intelligence protested, your larger civilization could have simply conquered us from the beginning. Why go through the pretense of primitive contact? Because conquest teaches nothing, Torres replied. We wanted to see if you were capable of growth, of choosing cooperation over domination. Some species have passed this test. They are now full members of the Intergalactic Union, exploring distant galaxies and contributing to projects that span millions of years. He gestured toward the surrender documents on the table. Others, like yourselves, failed the test. You are not evil enough to destroy completely, but you are not wise enough to be trusted with full membership in the larger community. You will be junior partners at best, supervised and guided, until you prove you can be better than you were. The truth was even more devastating than military defeat. The galaxy's rulers were learning that they had not just lost a war, they had failed an examination they had not even known they were taking. Their entire civilization was being held back from cosmic opportunities because they had chosen cruelty over kindness. Admiral Sarah Chen arrived at the station as the negotiations were concluding. She had come to personally oversee the final arrangements for galactic reconstruction under human oversight. Her presence filled the conference room with an almost tangible sense of power and authority. The galaxy will be rebuilt, she announced to the assembled representatives. But this time, it will be built correctly. No more exploitation of weaker species. No more casual cruelty disguised as political necessity. No more decisions made based on perceived strength rather than actual wisdom. She activated another holographic display, this one showing the new governmental structure that would replace the fallen Confederation. Humanity will guide this process, but we will not rule as tyrants. Species that prove they have learned from their mistakes will be given increasing autonomy and responsibility. Those that choose cooperation over competition will find opportunities for growth and advancement. The galaxy can become something beautiful if you let it. What about those who resist the new order? Asked a representative from one of the military species that had managed to survive by surrendering quickly. Chen's expression hardened slightly. Those who choose resistance will discover that what you have seen so far represents our mercy, not our full capabilities. The fleet that destroyed 3 galactic civilizations in 3 weeks was our local patrol group. Our actual military forces remain in other galaxies, dealing with threats you cannot imagine. The implications were clear. Humanity had eliminated the galaxy's greatest powers while barely trying. Any future resistance would be met with force beyond the survivors' comprehension. As the meeting ended, Torres stood before the viewport of the station, looking out at the stars. Admiral Chen joined him, and together they watched human construction ships beginning to appear throughout the local systems. Within months, the galaxy would have new communication networks, new trade routes, and new governmental structures based on cooperation rather than exploitation. Do you think they'll learn? Chen asked. Some of them will, Torres replied. The younger species, the ones that suffered under Confederation rule, they already understand that there's a better way. The older civilizations, he shrugged. They'll adapt or they'll fade away. Natural selection applies to cultures as much as it does to biology. Behind them, the surviving representatives of galactic civilization were leaving the station, carrying with them the terms of surrender and the knowledge that their universe was far larger and more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Some would try to rebuild their civilizations according to humanity's principles. Others would retreat into isolation, nursing their wounded pride until time and entropy claimed them. But the galaxy itself would survive and grow. Under human guidance, the cycles of exploitation and cruelty that had defined galactic politics for millions of years would finally end. Species that had lived in fear would find safety. Civilizations that had been held back by more powerful neighbors would finally have chances to develop their potential. The galaxy had indeed killed itself through its own choices, but from that death would come something new. A community based on wisdom rather than strength, cooperation rather than domination, mercy rather than cruelty. It would take generations to complete the transformation, but humanity was patient. They had waited centuries for this opportunity, and they would take however long was necessary to build something worthy of the stars. In the distance, Earth's sun shone with the same light it had always cast, but now it illuminated not just humanity's birth world, but the heart of a galaxy that was finally ready to grow beyond its primitive past and become something worthy of the infinite cosmos that surrounded it. The age of human mercy had begun, and it would last until every species in the galaxy had learned to choose kindness over cruelty, cooperation over exploitation, and wisdom over mere strength. Those who embraced these principles would find themselves welcomed into a universe of possibilities beyond their wildest dreams. Those who rejected them would find themselves left behind as the galaxy moved forward without them. The choice, as always, was theirs to make.